Good morning. It's Roger Lewis, aka Tone Freaks, here in Hallandsåsen, Sweden. I listened through the night with one ear to the US election, and obviously that's in a hiatus now when the votes are counted, and with respect to the battleground states, the electoral college states that will decide the outcome. Now, what I wanted to do was pose a question, and the title of this stream is Have the elites given up on democracy? The Biden landslide that wasn't. Now, I did a blog on the 30th of October, actually pointing out a Newt Gingrich interview, an article on Real Clear Politics, where he said he thought that a number of commentators and people of the left may be a bit disappointed with the outcome of the investment. Hi, Ranjan. All right.
Hi, Roger. How are you?
Yeah, good. Are you going to join the stream, or?
I could do.
I sent a link in Skype if you want to.
Yeah. Are you basically? This is me, so I haven't exactly got dressed up for the occasion.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. What I wanted to do was just whiz through a few points on not on the election itself, but the broader context in which we find this soon-to-be controversy of the vote count, which has been trailing for some time, but it's not as if we haven't been here before. So,
fine. Yeah, I'll join the stream. Cool. So I'm going to be looking like this. I'm still in bed.
Mate, no worries. I did get up and have a shower, but I, let's just go for the full comb over effect.
Fine, yeah. See you in a bit.
All right, cheers. It's on now, the stream, if you want to just click on. Right, that's Ranjan there, who just called me on Skype on my mobile. Well, you heard what I said to Ranjan there about what I really wanted to do. Is actually provide some context answering that question. Have the elites given up on democracy? The Biden landslide that never was. And I'm taking as my starting point, I'm just going to put up a screen share here. Put that there. Share screen. And I'm going to share this screen here. Okay, so there's a shared screen. Right, that's bigger. Okay, and what I wanted to do was just start off with this Laura Kuenssberg tweet, which was put out at 8:37 this morning, and Laura says, Trump says he has already won and that there is a fraud going on. Remember, millions of voters have not yet been counted. It is just not credible to make that claim. There is no evidence of such a fraud, and it is incredible such claims being made from the White House. Now, that's a pretty strong spin to put on what Donald Trump actually said. I sent a message to Ranjan earlier saying it's strange that Laura would say that when here we are. It looks like Ranjan's here. Your guests will need to connect their mic cam before they can. You can. There he is. Okay. Hi, Ranjan.
Oh, hi there, Roger. How are you? It's me, Ranjan. How are you?
Brilliant. I'm good, thanks. Right. Well, we did our phone call, and that was live, and I'd started making an introduction. But just to recap, the title of this stream was have the elites given up on democracy? The Biden landslide that never was. Okay. And I was just reading out Laura Kuzenberg's tweet that I sent you a copy of, where she said that Donald Trump saying there's a fraud going on, and it was outrageous that such claims should be made from the White House. And I said I'd sent you a message saying, well, have you seen Joe Biden's statement before he was put to bed last night? I mean, he similarly.
What did he say?
Because he was making quite confident claims that he thought they'd done quite well. It was a big turnout, and that they were going to go on and count all the votes. Now that's the narrative there. Now,
so that's him sticking to the rule book, isn't it?
Well, except the rule book is it has more or less already been modified somewhat because of these strange times, i.e. the lockdowns, the pandemic stuff, and the massive trend to mail-in voting as opposed to voting on the day. There were legal challenges in some states with respect to when a ballot is deemed to have been cast in time, and if there's a postmark and the ballot hasn't arrived. David Knight on bandvideo.com, he basically said the election's in the post, right? And that's quite funny. You know, it's a bit like the dog ate my homework, in that if you are going to have a date when votes need to be cast by, saying that posts, votes that are already in the post will still count and need to be counted in a close run race that has various problematical questions with respect to potential for some votes going missing and other votes turning up that are convenient to whoever is counting the votes. And I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Stalin or Lenin that said this, said it's not the number of votes that counts, it's who counts them. And when UN elections, when UN election observers go to different countries, the idea that there may be scams with respect to counting that goes on is not an unusual claim. I think
may I interject with with an argument that doesn't flow in your direction? Roger, I think you have engaged in argumentum ad Stalinarium and Leninium.
I'm just putting this speaker on so I can hear you a bit better, Ranjan.
Okay.
There we are. That's better. Right. So what am I engaged
in using your line? It's or your purported borrowed line of it's not the votes that count, it's who counts them. You've engaged in argumentum ad Stalinum and argumentum ad Leninum.
Quite. But at least it's an argumentum ad Hitlerun, which is the way to lose any debate on the internet, isn't it? Or whatever that one was. But but I mean, it's an interesting point, and putting what's happening in the States at the moment to one side, where have we seen this before? Well, we saw it in 2016 with the Hillary Clinton won the pop in the States, but we've also seen it with Brexit. We've also seen it in Belarus. We've seen, challenged elections or people pointing fingers at other people's elections, if you like. And then the biggie in all of this is the Al Gore George Bush the second election in 2000, and that's the hanging Chad's election. And this was disputes and legal disputes to do with the counting of votes electronically in Florida. Florida looks like President Trump has won a substantial victory in, and where the challenges are likely to fly are in Arizona, I believe, and also in Pennsylvania in the current election. But I don't want to dwell too much on that, because there's going to be a whole slew of stuff about that over the coming days. But it's the broader idea of, and this is the one we should take on board, is the broader idea of the elites, the oligarchy, and are they now fed up with democracy, which they call populism? Because here, yet again, there's a landslide that everyone's been encouraged to believe was going to take place, not having happened. Okay. The same thing happened in 2016, but the same thing happened with Brexit. Now, so there are a couple of things.
Sorry. When you say that, oh, you mean the 2016 US election? Yeah, sorry.
Yes, 2016 US election, the Brexit vote for 2016 in the UK. Then we had two subsequent elections in the UK. The one where Jeremy Corbyn, with huge support, before I would say he was nobbled, or that movement was nobbled, if you like, where he nearly beat Theresa May, who was obviously modelled her campaigning style on Hillary Clinton, who was an appalling candidate. Biden's an appalling candidate. There's no two ways about that. And Kamala Harris, no one, who that? No one knows who the hell she is, really. You have to be a bit of a cork sniffer. In 2016, the interesting thing is that Bernie Sanders was basically defrauded out of. So if you want to go look at some election fraud, look at the primaries in the US that sidetracked Bernie to shoo Hillary in. Right? There's serious form in this sort of manipulation. Okay, in the US system. Now, whether it's healthy to call it into question or not during a controversy, that's a slightly different point. But a good question is the title of this stream: are the elites giving up on democracy? The Biden landslide that never happened. The polls were wrong. They were wrong there. They were wrong in the referendum on Brexit. Another interesting one was the Scottish independence vote, where again there was a Project Fear, and there's the wonderful documentary by Professor Robertson, which is the bigger the lie, where he talks about the media manipulations that went on to try and get the Scottish independence vote to go the way it did. Now, regardless of where you sit on either the question, whether you want a Democrat or a Republican, what Biden is and what Trump is. I mean, the normal sort of labels that we've been brought up with, have changed, I think, over the years. So the red race, blue race, or whatever. What I want to do is look at it in terms of the Great Reset and a Great Reset of democracy, which is what I think we're actually having waved under our noses. And in the distractions of the COVID-19 pandemic, or the Contric-19 plandemic, depending what side of the fence you are on that. I read a paper yesterday, someone put in their feed, where they were saying people who believe conspiracy theories are mentally ill, and this was in some sort of medical journal, and so there are doctors already stepping up to the plate to sort of say, if you question what's being handed down by the Klaus Schwabs of this world and the Great Reset and the World Health Organization and Bill Gates, if you dare to question them, you must be mad. And of course that's the old saying, isn't it? Who the gods despise, they first make mad. I'm not sure who said that. It might have been Horace or something like that.
Well, I know that Enoch Powell quoted it in the Rivers of Blood speech right at the beginning.
So, well, I mean, we can wind back the clock to that sort of time, and that was to do
68.
with mass immigration. Yeah,
well, let's just think. With 68, I believe Martin Luther King was murdered in April 1968, and Mr. Powell would have made his speech in April 1968 as well, maybe a couple of weeks later. And so he was saying the type of racial tension that existed in the US did not at that stage exist in the UK. I think that was really the point of his speech, although it was perhaps done in a way which led to various interpretations.
I mean, I think I would still say that it still doesn't exist in the UK, that sort of racial tension. I mean, the USA has a very different history as a republic, and its relationship with slavery and the Jim Crow laws, very, very different to the UK and our relationship to slavery, and our economy.
I'm gonna have to be very careful about the way I say this, Roger. But are you suggesting that Enoch Powell had it wrong?
Well, what
we don't have to go down this route. I mean,
Enoch Powell comparing the US experience of race relations and the British experience of race relations, I think would have it wrong, in the sense that it's comparing apples and oranges. It's a different question. Okay, now at that time, particularly, these days, if someone like Enoch Powell made that speech about the Black Lives Matters protests or riots or whatever you want to call them in the US and in the UK, and things like politicians taking the knee, like Nigel Starmer or whatever he's called. That was not Nigel Starmer, was it Keir Starmer? Nigel Starmer Smith was an old rugby commentator. So yes, I would say that the history of race relations in the US and in the UK are quite different. And I mean, there are all sorts of things attesting to that. I mean, if you watch some of the war documentaries about the segregated US regiments in the Second World War, and quite what a fuss that caused in traditional conservative British communities. People just thought that was odd. I mean, British colonialism has a different face to US colonialism, and the US relationship and its own peculiar race issues are very different to those within, what we now call the Commonwealth, but what used to be the British Empire. Now, those sorts of questions, as they relate to the question of whether elites are giving up on democracy, they kind of play into it in terms of the strategies that they might adapt to divide and rule a population and distract them away from thinking about things like the Constitution. There's a new UK column thing on the British Constitution. I haven't listened to it yet. You've gone quiet, Ranjan. I can't hear you, Ranjan. I think your microphone has gone off, or your headphones, or. Ranjan's just gonna obviously log back in, get himself working. So, right, first of all, let's talk about oligarchy, and I want to bring up a blog here, which this is from January 2016. So this was written ahead of all of the Brexit upset in June 2016, and then the Donald Trump election in November 2018. And it's called The Iron Law of Oligarchy. This is in response to a comment on a Chris Hedges article. And Chris Hedges is one of the commentators that was really upset by Donald Trump. Here's Ranjan again. Ranjan?
I'm back.
Hello. You're back. You're upside down though.
Hello,
mate.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what about now?
Yep, that's great.
I wanted to ask you, you know what you were saying about Enoch Powell and race relations between the US and the UK. Which country do you think is easier to steal an election for either side?
Oh, blimey.
I suppose on the one hand, that means which country has a population which acquiesces, and then
I don't think either electorate in either country is more susceptible to accepting a rigged vote. I think most people would find that a preposterous thing. If we're talking about the political class, however, I think there's something else. Now, on this, what I want to do is just Joseph Schumpeter had a thing called the competing elites model of democracy, and Roy Madron, who wrote a book called Guy and Democracies, and then another book called Super Smart Democracies, said this. So this is Joseph Schumpeter now. Democracy is that institutional arrangement for arriving at political decisions in which individuals acquire the power to decide by means of a competitive struggle for the people's vote. So Joseph Schumpeter said that, and then Roy builds on that and also quotes someone called Dr. Carol Pateman, and they said this in their book, Participation and Democratic Theory. Schumpeter and his followers set the current Anglo-American political system as our democratic ideal, with a democratic theory that in many respects bears a strange resemblance to the anti-democratic arguments of the last, i.e. the 19th century. No longer is democratic theory censored on the participation of the people. In the contemporary theory of democracy, it is the participation of the minority elite that is crucial, and the non-participation of the apathetic ordinary man, lacking in the feelings of political efficacy, that is regarded as the main bulwark against instability. Now, this idea of what is democracy and Schumpeter's competing elites model of democracy, and the idea of universal suffrage goes against most elite ideas of what is good governance. And this goes back in political economy, and you find it in Immanuel Kant's work on politics, in Spinoza and his work on politics, but also you find it in Plato in Republic, and they propose,
what's
different
that? What
should be making decisions.
But what do you find, Roger? Do you find that Schumpeter's model he didn't come up with it, and that it is basically that a minority elite rely on apathy amongst voters.
Well, there are always questions
'cause-
about whether or not a high turnout is a good thing or a bad thing. Now, a high turnout in the election that there's just been in America, there has been one, and that has been a good thing, I think, for Donald Trump's side of the matter. High turnouts in some of the recent UK elections, certainly in 2017, when Jeremy Corbyn ran Theresa May very close, the high turnout undoubtedly was a good thing in terms of
for the Labour Party.
If you wanted the Labour Party or Jeremy Corbyn to win. Now, the way this idea, though, Ranjan, that the people have got it wrong in America because they, in my opinion, they clearly want Donald Trump to do another 4 years. And they don't feel they've got a lot to complain about as to what in the last 4 years.
But can you just unpack what you just said? Because you said the idea that people have made a mistake because they clearly, in your opinion, want Donald Trump to win. But that's what's being discussed here today, isn't it? Whether not, well, I mean, I suppose on the one hand is whether it's a good system, but on the other hand, it's what do the majority want if you accept the system, however illogical it appears to me, is the one we're going to use. So why are you saying that you think that a majority have voted for Trump? I'm not saying I think you're wrong. I don't know the answer.
Well, it's more complicated than that in that the US system is based on an electoral college, and you can go on to ABC and look at detailed maps of how people vote in different counties as opposed to in metropolitan areas. And there are silos of voters. I mean, California is all in for Biden pretty much. There's very low Republican side of that. Same with New York. But then if you look at Pennsylvania, okay, if you look at Pennsylvania, there are 3 counties which are basically Democrat, and all the rest are pretty heavily for Trump. But those counties have lower population. So the higher population density areas or the metropolitan areas, i.e. cities, do tend to have they have a different set of social problems, a different set of political conventions or traditions,
but who has more clout? Who has more clout in Pennsylvania? All those little Republican places, or the Democrat?
Well, that's what we're finding out at the moment. But at the moment, the governor is actually a Democrat, and it is the Democratic governor that's been determining the way that those votes are being counted and what. And it's basically that there are challenges being made to the technicalities as to what should and shouldn't be allowed, whether it should be retrospective. Effectively, are the goalposts being moved partway through the competition? Now, my argument would be that the elites don't like this result, and they will move the goalposts. They do that.
I don't find that very difficult to believe.
Yeah,
I've seen examples of that
happening elsewhere. For instance, in banking, the 2008 crisis, bailouts in banking. Who gets a bailout? What constitutes collateral for loans in terms of liquidity ratios?
Do you remember when George Soros made £1 billion off the UK pound?
Well, that was Black Friday when the pound fell out of the exchange rate mechanism. That was in 1992, I think, was it?
Straight after that, he his attention turned to France, and everybody knew it. And the European, well, there wasn't a European central bank at the time, But the European banking authorities, they said, well, the only reason why he was able to do that with the pound was because the pound had to, the UK economy had to maintain low interest rates at an exchange rate that stayed with the Deutschmark. So then they changed the rules and they said, France no longer has to stick to such a narrow definition, and the French franc can fluctuate as much as it likes. As soon as it was allowed to fluctuate, he decided not to speculate, and they qualified. But the reason why they were able to do that was because they changed the rules halfway in order to get the outcome they wanted. So
well, it happens.
Yeah,
it happens all the time. And if
Yeah.
it's a rule change that the media class are in favour of, they will put a favourable spin on it. If there's a challenge to a rule change, like at the moment, President Trump is saying, "Hold on a second, by the rules, right? We've won now."
Hold on. When you say by the rules we've won, I haven't watched much of this. I watched a tiny clip, and so this question that appears to be being asked about whether or not the whole mail-in thing, when the votes, so do all the votes count, and when do they stop, and do some votes not count?
Well,
la-di-da. So can you clarify that, please?
Right. Well, this has been brewing for a number of months, okay, and Nancy Pelosi, who's the leader of the is she the leader of the Senate, the House Representative? She has made various statements about vote counting and about mail-in ballots and about making sure that they're all counted. Now, no one, if someone votes legitimately, the vote should count. Of course it should. I mean, that's people that believe in democracy. No one would argue with that. But they would also say, well, obviously you have to have a date when you're having an election, and the vote, you should have a responsibility to get your vote in by then. Okay, that also seems to be fair enough. And it's been known that we've been having this pandemic emergency thing going on since last February. Everybody knew there was going to be an election in November. So it seems to me that there's been plenty of time to get things in place that the whole vote could be counted on the night. I mean, you know, it seems to me rather incompetent for that not to take place, and it's taken place in the large majority of the states in the US, but the ones, strangely enough, where they don't seem to have got their act together, are the key what we would call key marginals, or the battleground states. Okay, particularly Pennsylvania, which looks like it may become a tiebreaker. Now, well, you know, who'd have thought it? You know, blimey, it's a close election, and it's gone down to the wire, and wouldn't you know it, it's the one where they haven't managed to get their act together, and all the rest of it is the one where it's all now being hung upon, if you like.
What are you saying?
What am I saying? Well, what I'm saying is that due to the size of the popular vote, an in-person vote, okay, and the overwhelming support of people that have turned up on the day, in the states where the electoral college is decided, okay, it's been such an overwhelming vote in favor of Donald Trump that the mail-in side of things isn't of sufficient size to easily deny that, in fact, the electoral college has been won by Donald Trump. Now,
Roger,
they will
hold on a second. Roger, hold on a second.
Well, you asked me what I'm saying, and that's what I'm saying.
I know. I mean, I know it's what you're saying. Now, can I ask you for a moment? And this is not me seeking to gaslight you, but are you sure of your own sanity?
I'm absolutely perfectly sane. There's no question whatsoever as to my sanity.
Fine.
I mean, I'm interested in the broader question here as to whether or not a popular vote that goes against the elite agenda, and the elite agenda at the moment is the Great Reset from the World Economic Forum. There's no question about that. Prince Charles is on the record of saying we need to take this opportunity to do the planet a huge favour. We'll use this crisis of this pandemic,
Did he say that? Did he say we'll use the crisis?
Yeah. He was interviewed on something World Economic Forum thing, and all of that stuff. He didn't go as far as his father has gone in the past, as wanting to come back as a virus. And as Prince Philip is still with us, it's clearly not him. Prince Philip is Contract 19. They've never been seen in the same room. Yeah. It's what he would want to have come back at, but it's come back a bit early.
Well, you know what? They say that Charles and William have both had the virus. So there you are.
Well, and Boris or whatever. I mean, we all get flu now and again. Some years it gets us, other years it doesn't. Whether that makes me resistant to authority and actually saying it's flu, it's a coronavirus, and by definition, coronaviruses are forms of flu.
But can I just go back to what you were saying, because you were essentially saying Trump has won the election. Full stop. End of story.
Well, he hasn't won it in the sense that the declaration hasn't been made. But I would argue that if the votes had continued to have been counted overnight, he would be the winner by now. And
when you say continue to have been counted, do you mean if they'd stopped counting?
They've stopped the count in Pennsylvania, and they're going to resume the account 11 a.m. local time tomorrow.
Okay.
And he's well in the lead at the moment on that one. So the count is ongoing in Arizona, which is that one is.
Haven't they announced that Biden has won Arizona? I've seen tweets to that effect.
No, well,
with
they
people with blue ticks.
In the early counting, in some states they counted the mail-in ballots first. In other states they counted the vote-in-person votes first. And the mail-in ballots, because that's been happening for several weeks, and the initial momentum for the Biden campaign, which is really media driven and not driven by him as a personality, as it were. Okay. A lot of people cast their votes early, and the feeling is that they were, strongly Democratic in terms of the weight of vote, if you like. So if you count the mail-in vote before you start the in-person vote, Biden will have a lead, and that's what they say has happened in Arizona. I haven't looked at the sub-counties in Arizona. There is a question that Texas is maybe the best one to talk about rather than Arizona, because Texas again was fancied very much as a Biden thing, and that hasn't come about. Okay, but again, the order in which the votes are counted will determine how the lead varies. But
we're both sure
with the COVID-19 thing.
Okay, but we're both sure, though, Roger. We're both quite sure that Donald Trump is going to be the president next week and the week after.
Well,
because they have to remove him, don't they?
At all. I suspect that it's not what the power elite really want. Certainly not the Davos lot.
But do you think that they will enlist the military to remove him?
Well, whether there could be a military push in the US is an open question, and I don't think he's actually. I think that Donald Trump is very popular with veterans and probably with the military as well. There's no reason why he wouldn't be. So
is that your answer, Roger? Is your answer no?
My answer is I don't know. I find it an incredible proposition.
Okay.
In that I.
But for him to go, the only way he's going to go is if the military tell him he has to go.
Well, no, look.
I'm not trying to be nasty,
yeah,
Roger. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. If he believes he's won, then why should he go? If he believes he's won.
Well, this is the point: is that it may well drag on, and I think if it goes to the courts, it will be decided by the lawyers. And the strength of their arguments, and people have already started arguing about the latest appointment to the Supreme Court being another conservative, and she didn't actually vote on the question in Pennsylvania, so it's a bit more complicated than
Why didn't she vote? Was that because
Donald Trump is a businessman and understands the rules of business? He's turned, a businessman turned president, and he's improved his ground game and his political chops markedly. In the early Republican primaries in 2016 or 2015, he did really badly, right? He hadn't sorted his game out, but he learned through those primaries. He's figured out how this thing works. And he's really good at it now, and so he's not, I followed that 2016 campaign, both the primaries and the actual election, way more closely than I followed this one, way more closely, mainly because I was a big supporter of Bernie Sanders back then, okay, and so. And I watched as Bernie Sanders was actually turned in a similar way to how Corbyn was undermined. Okay. And effectively, if you'd had a Bernie Sanders Trump election, okay, in 2016, Bernie Sanders could well have won it. Okay. But that Bernie Sanders is a very different Bernie Sanders to the one that was supporting Joe Biden this time around, right? President Trump, however, I think is an improved President Trump, because he's had 4 years now. People said, look, he's a businessman. He can never be a decent president. I think he's been the best president in my lifetime. I genuinely do believe that. I don't agree with all his politics, right? But in terms of someone that puts forward some promises and actually made a good effort to keep them and kept quite a lot of them, and has improved things for blue collar Americans. There's no doubt that he hasn't signed up to the what you'd call the leveling down of the UN agendas as expressed through trade deals such as NAFTA and the World Trade Organization and all of that stuff, which has been disastrous for what they call the American middle class, but what we would call the blue collar type, in the UK. In the sense that at the moment we've got a plastic pseudo conservative prime minister ourselves in the UK in Boris Johnson, with all the talking about building back better, which is classic UN messaging, and is in fact Joe Biden's slogan as well. Okay, Trump, he's recycled "Make America Great Again," and it's now "Make America Great Again."
Yeah, but hold on a second. I take many of your points in that whatever he has done for blue collar America will be reflected in many ways in the votes that he gets. You know, people are going to vote for him if they feel that he's been looking after their interests, and that's obviously voters. But do you think that do you really think that Donald Trump is against all of the, because your main thing that you're saying is he's helped blue collar voters and also he's turned away from the UN agenda. But do you really think that him turning away from the UN agenda is something that he's going to continue to do, or that it was all just razzmatazz to get himself in? Because right now, as we've discussed previously, the agenda of those international trade deals, that absolutely hasn't gone away whatsoever. The the UK is going around the world saying we want to join in with those types of trade deals.
Well, the idea of international trade deals, okay, it's a question of whether they should be bilateral or unilateral. And the one size fits all NAFTA, which was obviously Mexico and Canada, and then the TPP, which took in the Pacific, basically the East, Eastern Pacific.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
TTIP, which is a European thing. They're more one side, or which you would call globalist. Okay. Now, so those are multilateral trade deals. Okay. Now,
exactly.
Bilateral or unilateral trade deals. Well, not uni really. That would be, but bilateral trade deals, which is where two countries agree to do their own thing in their own interests. Okay. Those have always existed.
The whole point of Roger is that culture is going away. And even though Trump said, right, I'm ripping up the TPP, the TTIP, and all of this stuff, the fact is those things have not gone, because in the background they're all being signed.
Precisely. But what I'm saying
he's not
is
really
that the
saying anything against those
haven't
things.
let go of them, and I don't think
he never
will.
speaks again. Yeah, but I don't. I mean, when I don't follow him properly, but he doesn't ever seem to speak against those things. So, for example, when Dominic,
if you right,
well, then why are we signing them? Why is Britain signing up to that stuff?
Well, Donald Trump isn't our president. We've got a prime minister called Boris Johnson, who talks about the rules-based international order, and effectively it is a Tony Blair Mark III. You know, he's a pound shot for David Cameron.
Yeah, but the thing is that Johnson and Cummings and Truss and all of these people, they do a lot of lip service to the American thing, and they're talking.
That's precisely it. They haven't, and so.
But don't say they haven't done any of the lip service, because they do it all the time.
They've been briefing. They've been briefing for Biden. Now,
I've seen stories that say that they are getting ready for Biden. Yeah.
Look, I mean, they are, of course, they're stories, and I haven't read what you've read, and I
don't read it. I just look at the headlines
about these things.
Just the headlines in the Times.
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not a player. I'm not on the board here, and so we can speculate as much as we like. What I think we can do is look at the continuing narrative of the globalist elite, which is Donald Trump is being a very naughty boy in that he's not accepting our preferred outcome of the election, which would have been a Biden landslide, which hasn't happened. And
I agree with you completely.
So
absolutely, that's what's happening. Yeah.
So then to fit that into the ongoing or unfolding events of the lockdowns in the UK at the moment and the locked down states in the USA, which are largely democratic states, right? Now,
why are they locked down? Because they chose it.
it's because globalist world governance types, okay, technocrats, okay, are very comfortable with the idea that they know best what to do if there's a pandemic and everything else that should flow from that. Okay. Now, the simple fact is that they are so convinced of their own competence and their own scientific governance methods, okay, that they do not brook any other alternative points of view. Indeed, they diagnose them as being mental health problems in their opponents. Is the deeply troubling landscape that we're facing here now. Whether Donald Trump represents Custer's last stand, as it was, against the globalists or not, remains to be seen. In 2016, when he was elected, he was by far and away the preferred candidate to Hillary Clinton, who was
who was Custer's last stand against? Was it against the Brits?
No. General Custer's last stand was against the it's cowboys and Indians stuff. It was in the Indian Wars.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm with the Indians then on that one.
Yeah, well, that's but I mean, it's just
Trump can be Custer as much as he likes.
Right. Well, but I think
your point is that Trump represents the last stand of everyone who isn't a globalist, really.
Yes, and
which is global capital, right? All that stuff.
Well, no, but not all of it. That's the whole point. It's there are factions in the oligarchy, right? Okay, and the two main factions are the Platonists and the Aristotelians, right? Those are the two main factions that have different worldviews, but the one thing they do share in common is that everyone else is peasants, and so a form of feudalism is perfectly okay to both of them. They just have a different way of treating the slaves, right?
Okay. What are the two ways? What are the two?
Who's your preferred slave owner? That when it gets to that level, and then there are other factions that do believe in conserving, and so they're more conservative of what the post-war settlement was, of a mixed economy, a kind of a pluralist sort of capitalism with a dash of liberal stuff, in the small L liberal rather than the classical liberal vein.
And so is Trump included in the Aristotelian or Platonic camp, or is he not that faction of the oligarchy?
I don't know. I don't know him, so I couldn't, possibly say, because the point is, you see, is that's kind of at the cork sniffing level, okay, and then the other camps that maybe would be attracted to one side or other of that question, okay, who knows? It dumbs it down too much. Whether Donald Trump has read, Aristotle's Politics or Plato's Republic or any of the other stuff that we've got, whether he knows who Socrates was or not, I don't know. I mean, he certainly wouldn't know that Socrates was also quite a famous Brazilian midfield player.
The doctor.
Soccer isn't the thing in the States, is it? Or maybe it's Trump's thing. I don't know. But I mean, I've watched two films in the last couple of days. I watched Alexander, which is the one with Angelina Jolie in there, and all of the Macedonians have got Irish accents, which is quite bizarre. But that's quite a good. It's an interesting film. And then the other one I watched, which I watched yesterday, was J. Edgar Hoover with Leonardo DiCaprio playing Hoover, right? And strangely enough, I mean, they are interesting films that inform, modern times more than maybe you'd think. There are quite a lot of parallels to both.
Are you talking about these two films because we were on the subject of dumbing things down? Are you saying Hollywood has dumbed everything down and created these two films?
We were talking about Platonism, and we were talking about Aristotelianism. Now, Alexander the Great, his tutor was in fact Aristotle.
Right.
Yeah. So
they're both expansionists.
Well,
both schools. Because I mean, if I think of Biden, I think Biden. He's like, he is of the US is good, expand US, and that's called progressive, but it's expansionary. So
with Biden,
so Roger, I mean, what are you saying? Because I think Biden is an expansionary person. Trump has not started lots of wars, whereas Biden probably would. As you say, Biden is interested in signing all these global deals, whereas Trump, he keeps talking about deals, but they're probably going to be bilateral.
Look, in US foreign policy, okay, you've got the Project for the New American Century, which is American exceptionalism, which does include American colonialism, if you like, or imperialism almost. Okay. And then you also have something called the Monroe Doctrine, which is American exceptionalism as respect or in respect of America's own backyard. And the Monroe Doctrine basically concerns mainly South America, Mexico, and places like Cuba, also with a little sort of glance north, looking at the Canadians.
I love it,
and probably mistrusting the French lot more than the British half of Canada, and Justin Trudeau, I think, is someone that President Trump should keep a very close eye on, because I think he's an enemy of US republicanism. Okay, and I think he's also an enemy of the Canadian people. I think Justin Trudeau is an awful person, and Christia Nuland, who I think is still in his cabinet, she was over talking at the time of Brexit about the Canadian trade deal with the EU, and what have you. But the point is about those sorts of trade deals is that their might is right. It's all in favour of global corporations, and it's basically global fascism, which is the melding.
But what makes you think? What makes you think that a UK-US trade deal is going to be any better?
It would be bilateral as opposed to multilateral. And
but what makes it? But what makes you think that?
Well, effectively, if the government is accountable to the people should say, "Well, look, this should be subject to the laws."
Yeah, but that's not
in our
happen.
respective countries.
But that's not going to happen over here.
The multilateral ones are subject to special courts outside of the normal systems, and for which normal citizens don't have access to take up their own.
But we're going to get exactly the same thing with the
corporations.
We're going to get exactly the same thing with the UK-US trade deal.
Well, if we hold our politicians to account, which is our job, if we're going to take an active part in our own democracy and we want to respect and nurture our own democracy, then we have to hold our politicians to account. Like, for instance, they're voting today in Parliament on these new lockdown measures. Okay, and if people were holding these people to account and saying, look, if you're going to be voting for this, we're going to vote you out next time. There's no way we're going to vote you. We are watching what you do. We will see how you'll vote. And if you vote against our interests, and I think the lockdowns are
But they are. Everybody's going to vote for it. That's the
They're
problem.
massively against the interest of regular people in the UK.
But Roger, listen, we both know that these lockdown votes are just going to sail through. Everyone's going to vote for the lockdown.
And we should note that down. And where there are people that vote against, it would be interesting to see whether Steve Baker does vote against it. I mean, he's turning into a sort of a Nigel Farage of the Conservative Party.
I agree with you
on issues at crucial periods of time.
I think, in principle, I agree with everything that you are saying. In principle, however, things move just quick enough for us to just be wrong-footed frequently. So I just don't think that. I think
I disagree with that. Okay, I think it's possible to be out-strategized if you don't think a few steps ahead, right?
Yeah, but we can see what you called out.
I think we can catch up in the same way that Donald Trump caught up very, very quickly after the Republican Party primaries in 2016, where he realized there were a lot of Republicans that were actually against him. He wiped the floor with them as that progressed. And then he continued then to wipe the floor with Clinton, and has done the same against Biden.
But over here,
I mean, Biden is the equivalent of hitting someone with glasses on. I mean, it's you wouldn't count it as your most significant victory ever, but the victory against the media, it is incredible because the cards were massively stacked against Trump coming anywhere close, and the fact that he's come as close and probably squeaked it if.
I think we're both agreed.
Prevail in the law courts to prevent prevent dirty dealing.
I think we're both agreed, right? Maybe for different reasons. I think we're both agreed. Donald Trump is still the president today. He's still going to be the president tomorrow. He's going to be the president in a week, and
he's the president until next January. But what I mean is,
when
his mandate is renewed, will be decided over the coming weeks. Now,
but he's never, ever gonna. His people and everything like that. He's going to remain the president next year. Full stop. Obviously.
Well, I don't.
He'll just appeal. He'll sue anyone that says otherwise, and he'll just appeal.
The point is that
that's a prediction.
Well, the process legally is there will be people putting legal arguments by the other side. So in the same way that currently the election is possibly in the post, okay.
But are we agreed?
Will eventually go to the judges. So a parallel. Let's all talk about the prorogation of Parliament and the Gina Miller case.
Oh God,
to Brexit and stuff like that. Okay, that's the sort of equivalence that you have with this changing how the voting side of things. When is a valid ballot?
Yeah, but Roger, listen. I think rather than going there, can we just agree that we both think that Trump is going to be the president for the next term? Do we not both think that? You sound like you do.
I don't know. I don't know. I think.
Well, I do. I know
there will be a challenge to that outcome, which I certainly don't support that challenge. I think it's a very bad thing. But I think the people who are undermining the American Republic and their way of electing their leadership, okay, the people undermining that are the Democrats, and it has been them since not just the inauguration of President Trump, but the run up to it, but also the way that they absolutely decimated their own grassroots base in how they treated Bernie Sanders in their primaries in the run-up.
Fine. Now, Roger, look, all of that stuff is in the past. Obviously, it was all what they did. Now, for now, I think it's obvious that the counts have not been done. the results are not in, but there will be a dispute about the results no matter what. And unlike with Al Gore, the Democrats are less likely to let go. They know how much is riding on it. They will keep pushing legally. And so in a way, it will be a bit like the Remain campaign over here, except
well, they've had the equivalent of the Remain campaign in the UK for the last 4 years, with all of the impeachment stuff and the allegations about Russian meddling and all of this sort of thing. I mean, it's
yeah. So I mean, I'm not talking
they
about
have not behaved well. They've not covered themselves in any measure of glory.
Sure.
They've
Well,
acted
I mean,
appallingly.
Yeah. So the point is this: that it's like Zeno's paradox. On the one hand, the rabbit has overtaken the tortoise. On the other hand, the rabbit will never overtake the tortoise because the tortoise has moved on. So you could take the reality, which is the votes have been counted and whoever's got more votes has won. Or you could take the other version, which is let's have a big permanent legal battle over it. You can't have both. So at some point, the legal avenue will close. And the point at which it does close, I think it's more likely that whoever is the president at the time will stay the president. Because we're talking about arguing to the point where you no longer count the numbers. Because this is the thing where you start moving into the quantum, isn't it? Where suddenly the numbers don't matter.
Do
you agree with me?
There are several levels to it. There's the first level is the actually interpreting the rules, and this is the postal bit and all the rest of it. There are several iterations of that before you then get on to, right, has there been some electoral fraud here too? Now, Project Veritas have done various exposés over the last few months of ballots being sold and whatnot. That stuff exists on the internet.
Okay, but without going into detail and just looking at the technicalities, I've already made it clear several times that as far as I'm concerned, Donald Trump is going to carry on being the president. You appear to say that you don't know. Then the question becomes what the legal, because either it goes to the courts or it doesn't. Okay, so let's say it doesn't go to the courts. That means Donald Trump gets fewer votes where it counts. The Democrats get more. Donald Trump accepts and goes home. The other option is the Democrats accept.
I think it's the other way round, though.
Fine. Well, the other option is
whether or not the Democrats will accept and go home.
Fine. So that's the other option.
Are they capable of being that grown up? Well, they weren't capable of being that grown up in 2016. And
but on what basis?
They doubled down on their own.
No, because in 2016 they did give up. Hillary said
they didn't. That's the whole point. They absolutely didn't. They challenged the legitimacy of President Trump's presidency.
Did they?
From the get-go.
Yeah, but they didn't. I'm talking about in the court.
Inaugurated.
Yeah, but did Hillary take him to court? That's what we're talking about. If you're just talking about a few mouths.
What do you think impeachment is or was?
Completely different, Roger. Come on, you can't try that.
I mean, Roger, look, you can't. A legal process, and that is
Roger,
as serious a court as you can take any
Roger,
president
you can't try that now. The impeachment has got nothing to do with the election.
Well, no, actually, it does. It speaks to the point about did the Democrats act like Democrats in accepting a democratic mandate that was delivered fairly and squarely to Donald Trump? No,
I thought the impeachment.
They behaved appallingly.
I thought the impeachment was about whether or not Donald Trump had said something during a telephone call to a leader of Ukraine in order to instruct him or encourage him to do an investigation into a business that his opponent's son had been involved in, blah, blah, blah. But I'm
Funny how
talking
that
about
one's
the
come round again, isn't it?
I'm talking about the previous election and accepting an
Well,
election
the previous
result.
election,
That's
but
the
with
only
the
thing that counts here.
allegations,
That's what we're talking about.
It's the whole sort of black is white, white is black element
but Roger,
of this. It's
Roger,
the
listen.
Orwellian doublespeak.
But
Hunter
hold on.
Biden's laptop exists.
No, but hold on. Let's not talk about.
It shows huge corruption on their part.
I don't want to talk about that.
Accuse your own opponent of that which you wish not to be accused of yourself. If you're guilty of that very thing.
Roger, listen. You and I must remain above the fray. So I'm only asking one particular question.
I mean, let's get back to the original question and this idea about, are the elites giving up on democracy? What evidence do we have of that? And I think that we have to fit into this moment in history, where we are with Brexit, where we are in terms of leaving the EU, and without a deal, without an ongoing interference from the EU, the EU commissars, really, from their from the Politburo of the EU.
No, but hold on. Can I just say, whilst I agree with the question, what was the question again? Is the oligarchy going to accept a result that doesn't go in its favor, or is it going to do whatever it can to shift it in its direction? Okay, so on the basis that either Trump gets more votes and wins, or fewer. If he gets more, then this question is basically asking whether the oligarchy will accept that he has got more, or whether they will argue. And if they do, the question is, what shape and form will that argument take? So they can go into a bit of a huff, and they can say, we're taking this to court.
Yeah, it's the thing is, Ranjan, is that the Electoral College and the way that works, okay, they have to change things so that the Electoral College works and gives them a victory. And the only way to do that is to effectively now make it so that Biden wins the popular vote in a couple of places where that isn't happening at the moment and isn't likely to happen. Okay. And so the strategy that they may be adapting or adopting is to find out.
I can't hear.
How big a target they're aiming for.
Can you still hear me, Roger?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here still, Ranjan. Hello? I can hear you fine,
I can't
Ranjan.
hear. I'll come back in a second. 1 second.
Can you hear me, Ranjan? You're going to come. Ranjan has just disappeared off. Let's have a look what's happening here. This is the Periscope feed, which seems to have. Let's have a look what's happening here. This is the Periscope feed. Right, live with no viewers. Okay, so I'm just going to take that off there. Okay, so. Hi, Ranjan.
Hi. So we're just wondering what shape will it take if Trump gets more votes and the Democrats won't accept it? What shape will it take? That's the question we are asking. Because it's in line with the oligarchy not accepting it.
Well, they might do. Well, I mean, I don't know. What they're
I just don't think I don't think they can.
In the first instance, they're going to claim, yes, we've won the Electoral College by, by fair means, in that late ballots have been counted, and here's the surprise. Actually, Donald Trump hasn't won. We have. Now, that's a difficult one because it's likely, I think, that ballots, even posted later, with the benefit of having seen the last debate and the last week of campaigning, Biden's support dropped off a cliff. Apparently, the biggest search term on the internet after the third debate was, can I change my vote? I've already voted. Can I change my vote? And that was one of the biggest inquiries in Pennsylvania, which is where Biden said he was against fracking, and states where that's a major industry obviously aren't very happy with the prospect of being thrown out of work. Now, I mean, as it happens, I personally am not a big fan of fracking. I think fracking's a very bad idea. But of course, if I was making my living from fracking, and there were very few other alternatives, I imagine that I would have been persuaded in a similar way to those people. And if I'd already voted for Biden, then he said that, maybe I would have checked as well. Sort of, can I change my vote?
Yeah.
But
but we can't be going into all of that stuff. The only thing that matters is
but you have to. That's the point. If you start going down the road, you have to start going through all the different
going down the road of giving everyone the choice of changing their vote.
No, well, no. What I'm saying is this. Okay, this is the point I was just making. By allowing later votes to be counted, is that going to improve the Democratic position? My argument is, if they're genuine votes that people have actually sent in by post later in the campaign, which is why they've got there later, they're more likely to be for Donald Trump than for Biden, because Biden's weaknesses became very, very apparent towards the end of the campaign. They couldn't hide him forever, right? So then the next question then is, and what the hardcore voter fraud worriers worry about, is just straightforward ballot stuffing. Getting, basically the old-fashioned one for you, two for me way of counting. That's and frankly, I think it's a legitimate concern when faced with the degree of corporate corruption, the sheer rot in our political establishment, right?
Well, I think that if you're a powerful person, and I think like historically in England this probably was quite normal, then on the day of the vote, you go to the pub and you tell people, that I own the area and I will get you a drink if you vote for me. That's the way, isn't it?
Well, what's that called? Pork barrel politics and all of that sort of thing, isn't it? I mean,
it was quite normal in England, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Where you turn up, not everyone's allowed to vote, and you say to everybody, individually, you say, right, okay, can I count on your vote? And you get them a drink, and they basically say, oh, okay then.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, have you read the book Sins of the Father? It's a biography of Joseph Kennedy. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And it's called Sins of the Father.
Sins of the Father, and it talks about when JFK got elected, right? And Joseph Kennedy apparently famously said, because he would lay out the money all over the place for the different campaigning. And he sort of said, oh, send them. Someone asked him for an amount of money, and he said, no, I'll send them half of that. He said, you know, I want to win, but I'm damned if I'm going to pay for a landslide. Right. Which, you know, this idea that, you know, you can spend more money and get more votes. Now, with bribery, yes, with the advertising. But this is the interesting thing. The Biden campaign has outspent President Trump by an enormous margin. I think it's certainly something like 5 or 6 to 1. I'm not sure if it's 10 to 1, but it's a massive. It's several orders of magnitude more.
Now, Roger, be careful. I mean, you're just saying 10 to 1, obviously, like that. I don't know if you're right.
It's a huge.
Okay. But we're agreed.
Outspending that they've done, and of course that's come from you know, places like Silicon Valley that are indulging in all of this online censorship. You know, they've got their thumb on the scales, trying to tip things in favor of their person, and their person was Hillary and is now Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, whatever. These, you know, I call it the tyranny of the nerds.
Actually, you know what? I mean, I don't follow this very much, but somebody told me that Whitney Webb has predicted an enormous cyber attack happening very soon. Global. That's going to take down the whole internet. Something like that. What do you think?
Well, I mean,
it might be the same people that you're talking about. I'm sorry for introducing that like that.
I mean, the thing is, like, if you know anything about the internet, you wouldn't take down the whole thing. You just take down the bit of it that you want to take down. I mean, you know, you can do a lot. You can do a lot more. You can be a lot more subtle than just turning the whole bloody thing off. You know, you can turn it off for some people and leave it on for others. You know, i.e., the ones you want to get organised or keep messaging. I mean, it's you know, I mean,
are we on the brink of civil war in the United States?
I certainly hope not. I think, you know, there are certainly hotheads on either side that could end up doing some damage. Civil war is I mean, you can provoke a civil war anywhere, you know, by pushing the right buttons.
I mean, the good thing about a civil war is that you may well have two sides, but you know, so it's a bit easier for people like us to tell.
I hope not, and I think the American people are better than that, and the polarities, if you like, like the chattering classes on Twitter, which is largely a liberal lot, if you like. They don't. Most people will accept a defeat and then embrace the, you know, and go in for the unifying speech sort of thing. You know, most people are up for that because most people have an abiding faith in democracy. It's the dystopian view that, oh, you know, you've got to enforce the democratic thing by, you know, you've got to enforce it. You've got to quit. It's I don't. Like I said, I think that the American people are better than that.
I don't think it makes that much difference who wins to me, because everything that you're just saying about the methods, I think
it makes a huge difference, Ranjan. It makes a massive difference to the conduct of world affairs with this pandemic exaggeration, this overreaction to the pandemic, with this sneaking in of the Great Reset agenda of the Davos type people.
Okay, But fine, that's
I
pretty
think it
serious
makes
stuff.
a huge difference. And if you, there was a clip I saw last night. Okay, there was what was it? And it was some clips of Donald Trump during his term. And there's one where he's at the NATO conference when they try to get him to the back, and he comes to the front, and Jens Stoltenberg almost squares up to him, right? Like Stoltenberg is, almost like he's ready for a fight, and Trump looks pretty up for it too. I mean, I'd pay to see that, actually. You should put them in a bloody ring. I mean, Stoltenberg's obviously a military man, and maybe he's got some decent chops in martial arts. I don't know, but quite honestly, it was obvious that Stoltenberg was really pissed off with Donald Trump. The body language was very, very clear. And that's because Donald Trump said to all of the different NATO countries, look, if you're going to have NATO, you can bloody pay your share of it. That's basically what he said. And in the same way, that's been the sort of the wealth of the USA has been squandered by the military industrial complex, not just at a USA level, but at a worldwide level. And NATO has been one of the major beneficiaries of the hollowing out of USA wealth, the decline in its infrastructure, etc., paying for this massive military machine to support a world governance that the Republic wasn't founded on any of those tenets. It just wasn't. And so the general idea of America first for Americans, charity beginning at home, all of that stuff, okay, is brilliant news for the rest of the world in terms of European tyrants and Chinese tyrants, whatever, Middle East, whatever, those people using the US military to enforce its own local tyrannies under this overarching world governance thing.
So do you think there's? Do you think
go back to David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger, and Kissinger getting the Nobel Peace Prize for his? I think he got it for doing.
So what you're saying is, if Trump wins, then that means that most countries will be asked to spend more on their own military, and that's a good thing.
Well, that's already been asked for. So it's an example of how a part of the establishment, so the Atlantic Council type people, do not like Donald Trump, right? And they're the Davos people. They're the World Economic Forum people. They are what we call the globalists. Globalism does exist as a political ideology, along with a faction of the neoliberal establishment, okay, and
along with it's the same thing, isn't it?
Well,
what's the distinction? Are you pro neo? Are you pro? I mean, are you pro neoliberal, anti-global?
Yeah,
or are you
look, if there's a
both?
government, I'm against it. I'm an anarchist. I'm a proper anarchist. I'm not an Antifa wanker.
So,
right?
So you don't believe in voting then?
If they want some rough stuff, they can come and see me. But I think they're cunts. That's what I think they are.
But you don't believe in voting.
Look, I believe in voting if it can make a difference in the sense that you can get someone in there that will advocate for your local thing. So, for me, living in Sweden, there's no point me voting. I can't make any difference. I mean, I'm not registered to vote in the UK. I live in Sweden. I don't vote here. I'm not interested in the EU. I think it's completely and utterly, well, I don't think voting in EU elections does any good. So they're meaningless. The power does not rest with the people you vote for in the EU. They're just puppets, right? So it's a more complex question than sort of on some questions, it certainly is worth voting. And I think yesterday, you know, in the US election, I'm not a US citizen, I haven't got a vote over there, but I think people who exercise their vote had the chance to make a difference and are making a difference, because it's opening up this question and people can discuss these issues. But what are the actual issues? A fundamental issue is, if a government is not fulfilling its promises and delivering for the people that have voted it in, they should be able to vote them out, right? Okay, now, and then you've got to broaden that up, and with this pandemic, subjecting your local policy to the World Health Organization or diktats from the World Bank.
But this is where I can finally,
and all of that. Okay, you know, we don't vote for those people. You don't want them dictating what you know, at a local level or at a personal level, what you can put in your body in terms of vaccines and things like that.
Well, I think this is where I can see the consistency between your anarchism and the stance that you're taking, because what you're saying to me is that there are certain people who nobody gets to vote for, that get to choose a lot of what happens. And the question is, do we just go along with that, or do we ask what questions can be asked about how to stop that? And so on that basis, I think it's consistent that you, someone who's more into anarchism, would prefer for the world for Trump to win. And then at this point, we're looking at the reality, which is that they have officially not declared it. He's called it a win. And the only question is, how long does it get dragged out? Agreed? Because it will be dragged out now for maybe a month.
Well, yes, but the point is,
maybe 2 months, until the beginning of January. They might drag it out until the last day and delay the inauguration of Joe Biden, or the re-inauguration.
I really do think that the question that we all need to ask, looking at this from the outside looking in, isn't your question to me, will Donald Trump vacate the White House, or will the army have to get him out of there? Right.
No, I'm not assuming. That makes it sound as though I want him out. Look, whoever gets the votes.
The question is, what external assistance will the corrupt Democratic Party call upon to get the result which they feel is theirs as of right? Right. So what will they call upon? Will they call upon the forces of color revolution, which have been called into play in places like Ukraine, places like Syria, places like Libya, places like Belarus recently? Okay.
So I suppose this would be the Orange Revolution, or anti-Orange Revolution, or something. That's what you mean.
Well,
they make it look like it's
as a pun on Donald Trump being the Orange Man, or are you talking about?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, not Ukraine. Yeah. The anti-Orange Revolution, I suppose.
Yeah. Well,
that's the kind of thing you mean, right? Where they basically call for popular resistance in the streets in order to resist the tyrant, Donald Trump. Yep.
Well, that would be the narrative they use. I mean,
yeah.
I really don't think Donald Trump is a tyrant. I mean, in 2016,
no, but I was just saying that. I
preferred Trump to Hillary when it came down to that. And what I said was that Donald Trump may be, the legend of Narcissus.
Yeah, but hold on. I wasn't calling him a tyrant. I wasn't calling him a tyrant. I was just talking about you were saying the color revolution, and they were saying that's what it would look like. Okay, fine. So that's the question that we were asking. Is there going to be a color revolution?
All
that's
of the
an option.
propaganda devices have been used to try and get the people to vote the right way. And they haven't done that. They haven't bought that faulty bill of goods, right?
Well, the
And of course,
landslide, I thought the landslide was a bit much to ask for. You know, when people were saying, oh, there's going to be Biden's well ahead, there's going to be a landslide. I remember having a chat to you and you said, well, actually, I think if there's going to be a landslide, it's going to be the other way. I realized that your view was not popular, but, you know, the only view that I could see on the stuff I was looking at, which was New York Times and things like that, it basically just said Biden would win. So, yeah, you're right. That hasn't happened. He can't just walk away with it.
I mean,
It does look like a great opportunity for a scam.
Yeah,
it's not about if either one is a tyrant. It's just a case of how is this going to go? So either there's a revolution in the streets that's begged for, and the courts.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a discussion, all of that stuff is going to be spoken about half to death. Okay, the big things which won't be discussed, which is unfortunate, and which, if they were discussed, would actually make a difference, okay, are these questions of global governance, of states' rights with respect to dealing with local issues.
But do you think you've got any blind spots when it comes to your passion for Donald Trump?
Well, I've got a massive blind spot that there's even a passion. I mean, I
Oh, come on, Roger. We know you like Donald Trump. That's not exactly concealed.
Look, put it this way: he's no friend of mine, and I would shag his wife. I mean, I think she's gorgeous, so I'd admit to a passion for Melania. But as far as Donald Trump goes, I think he's done a perfectly good job and all the rest of it. But do you know what I'm saying? I mean,
okay, so you're saying he's a bit like a waiter at the restaurant.
What I think is that his foreign policy has done a lot of good for those of us that aren't in the US, and he was a much better result for all of us. And we dodged a bullet not getting Hillary Clinton, and we'll dodge another bullet not having Joe Biden. Right? And
well, that's a very easy way of arguing, and okay, fine. Okay, that's I can see what you're saying about not liking Hillary and not liking Joe Biden. But I mean, what about the bad things that Donald Trump has done? Can you think of any?
Well, yeah. I mean, I look, the good or bad that he's done, okay. I don't know him personally, and so I haven't been affected by any of the supposed bad that he's done. Okay, and I don't trust the sources which tell me that he's done all those things.
All right. Well, can I put something to you and see what you think of it? Because I know you know about this stuff, but didn't he just serially appoint people to run regulators that had made statements against each one of those regulators and basically just destroy as many of them as he could?
Did he? I've no idea what you're referring to. I don't know.
Okay. All right. There's this thing called the CFPB or something like that. Then the environmental agencies, some of the agricultural ones and the scientific ones. I think quite a few of them, he appointed people at the top, and the governments, like Betsy DeVos for education. He puts people in charge of departments that have briefed against them.
Well, Betsy DeVos was an interesting one, I think, because her brother is the mercenary guy, isn't he?
Eric Prince, yeah, exactly. So he's super. Yeah, they're all super tight.
A major investor in a wind turbine company. Now, I love wind turbines. I really like them. I think they're beautiful. And I'm a real alternative energy nerd. I love electric cars. I love all that stuff. I'm a real techie nerd, right? But the so the DeVos thing was quite interesting because she was trying to get President Trump to be a bit more on board with the Paris Accords, for instance. Now, I think the Paris Accords are complete bullshit, right? But yet here I am. I'm a real techie nerd and a confirmed tree hugger, right? And yet Donald Trump has spoken way more sense about those issues than the likes of Caroline Lucas in the UK, who you think as a confirmed tree hugger and what have you. I would, I would think that she was the best thing since sliced bread. I happen to think she's a complete idiot. Now, I mean, you pick the bones out of that. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that I listen to the arguments that I hear people make, not the arguments of people saying they made this argument or they made that argument. If someone has made an argument and I can go and see that they've made it in writing or hear them make it in person on a recording or whatever, I will then listen to that, right? But there's not a lot of that as far as Donald Trump is concerned. There's a very good documentary about his. This is an interesting one. He built a golf course in Scotland, a links golf course, and there's a really interesting documentary about that golf course, which a lot of Scottish politicians were in favour of, right? And he didn't act very well, in my opinion. Certainly, and his organisation didn't act very well in respect of neighbours to that golf course and getting the job done. And I made a film comparing Trump to Mussolini.
I think you, and you did that long before he ran, didn't you?
Yeah, I did that during the primaries when he was running against Bernie Sanders. So I've had a good look at the dark side of Donald Trump, and there's no doubt that it's there. I mean,
yeah, I think you showed me
he's
that
a
one.
rough and tumble businessman, but so am I.
Roger, you're not comparing yourself to Donald Trump, are you?
With the amount of venom that lots of other people seem to do. But I'm quite used to people not liking me because of what I am in terms of being a property developer or whatever. I'm a businessman and a property developer, right? And that doesn't make me Father Christmas for a lot of people. A lot of people don't. They sort of leopard never changed its spots, or all of that stuff. So in a way, I swim in the same pool as Donald Trump, if you like. Far from.
But hold on. But Roger, you enjoy getting to play Santa occasionally, don't you? Whereas,
well, I'm sure Donald Trump does too. I mean, I think his physique is better suited to it than mine, although mine is getting there, and certainly has been there in the past.
Right. Well,
I'd certainly like to play Santa to Melania.
Oh my God! Stop it, Roger. Right. Okay. So, are we agreed as we enter the 90th minute or something like that of this, that there's to be a protracted dispute with regard to who gets to be the president over the next 4 years?
I think there will be
there could be a colour. There could be dispute. There could be the invoking of a.
I do place the responsibility for that as a long-term strategy more in the camp of the Democrats and the globalist establishment than Donald Trump. So when we started off looking at Laura Kusenberg's critique of Donald Trump's statement last night, without even mentioning Joe Biden's, it's just it's a continuation of the disingenuous in the extreme. I mean, it's it's the same mindset that just doesn't get Brexit. The same mindset that didn't get why Jeremy Corbyn won the leadership of the Labour Party when no one thought that he could, and why he did well in that election against Theresa May.
But because we're sort of wrapping up, then the conclusions are that there's going to be a dispute. Then there could be this whole thing about the colour revolution. And if there were to be that road gone down, then Biden would be calling for his troops to get on the streets, and Trump would be calling for his. Although if Trump were to do that, then that would be a mix of streets. Basically, he would have his militias.
Civil war or have a civil war, you certainly wouldn't put Joe Biden at the head of it.
No, but I'm not talking about a civil war, but I'm just saying for this dispute, if it goes down the route of, right, okay, let's have an argument, let's start getting on the streets and stuff like that, then Trump's going to win, isn't he?
Yeah, well, that's happening already anyway. There was...
so Trump will win that easily. There's way more people with guns on Trump's sides.
It's a totally unsatisfactory resolution to...
I know, but that's where we're going, isn't it?
To what has been a reasonable democratic tradition in the US. I mean, you can go back to and smashing the Wobblies and all the rest of it, but that was a long time ago. I mean, Emma Goldberg is mentioned in the JF Edgar Hoover movie.
Okay. Well, I think we should wrap up. We have learned that you think that there's going to be a long argument.
Well, look, here's a big takeaway. Big takeaway. The polls were wrong again, right? Are they incompetent, or were they trying to achieve some sort of other end? My own view on the political maths, which is a term I borrowed from you. You're the one that gave me that political maths little phrase. Is that it's been discredited, and there's no doubt that it's political bias that drives a lot of the agendas that we see from the... I was saying about political maths, Ranjan, and the polling. You know, the polling was massively wrong again. Okay, and this is the Rovian actors in history point about reality-based communities and all of that. Look up Karl Rove and reality-based communities, and the idea that you create your own reality going forward if you are, the elite or whatever. It's kind of a kind of curious kind of confirmation bias, trying to project a confirmation bias into the future, and it's a sort of ego projection attempted upon the electorate as well. I mean, it's so all of that stuff is the manipulative stall of the rules-based international order, Davos, NATO, Atlantic Council set has been laid out in front of us yet again, and they're the same people that are trying to pull this shit with the overreaction to COVID-19. It's an overreaction, and they're trying to impose control, and they're trying to impose a sort of feudalism or serfdom upon people, and taking away our hard-earned democratic birthrights, if you will. And they vary around the world. It's done slightly differently around the place, but they're one size fits all rules-based international slavery system. As far as I'm concerned, they can stick it where the sun don't shine. And what we need to do is shine a light on the wider agenda that is represented by this current cheap stunt that they're trying to pull to deny the wishes of the US electorate. And of course that doesn't then answer the question of the popular vote. And to do that one would take a whole other video about why the popular vote and why the electoral college are not kind of mutually exclusive ideas, that why there is a synergy between those two ideas, and the idea of evening out the distribution of the vote in a way, which is a really difficult concept to talk about, because, you know, democracy, if you believe in one person, one vote, you say, right, yeah, okay, I'm with that. But the US is a federal republic, and federalism, and so the states' right and the local side of that, to get people to agree to act federally, you have to allow local traditions and local custom to remain in place. You don't scrub it out. And so it's a really subtle system. And when people are acting in bad faith or arguing in bad faith, it's really hard to discuss such a subtle system. And, you know, the American Constitution and electoral system, you know, has its good points, has its bad points, but it is a subtle system, and it does bear much more serious discussion than, you know, oh, he won the popular vote and therefore Donald Trump is not my president kind of idea. Right, well, I'm going to sign off there. I haven't clicked through all these windows, which I intended to do, but
I'm back.
Jen. Sorry, you went again.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. So one last provocation, Roger. May I?
Yeah. Oh, hold on. I see there's a few comments as we've been talking.
All right. Well, I think we better wrap up.
Okay, cool. There's two people have commented. Someone called No Worries 2020, another one called Lurven is in place. I don't know if they, I doubt they've struggled through all of this. But thanks for watching anyway. I'll have a read of those afterwards.
Okay,
yeah.
well, good stuff. I assume you weren't up all night.
I did listen to it through the night, and I snoozed off. I listened to Joe Rogan for most of the night,
Okay.
and then I listened to the band video, the Alex Jones side of things. So Owen Schroer, Roger Stone came on, Alex Jones was there, whatever. So they did their thing, but you know. But I wasn't awake the whole thing. I mean, it you know, frankly, it wasn't that riveting. Yeah.
No.
Anyway.
All right. Well, yeah, let's see what happens. Hopefully there's not too much, hopefully there's not too much violence.
Well, I hope not. I mean, you know, there were some sort of people obviously prowling about. That I watched some on Sky News as well. Sky News Australia, who for whatever reason have been doing quite a lot of stuff on, and then Fox News. I mean, I've watched around a bit, you know, but there was a Sky News Australia reporter following a bunch of, I can only assume that they were Antifa types, and you know, allegedly there are pallets of bricks that have been strategically placed around places. You know, I mean, it's a bit like the Million Pussy Hat March business. You know, do you remember that?
Okay, yes. So
and we all know, or we all have our own suspicions about where some of the funding comes for, some of these popular movements. And yeah, I mean, it's a rather unsatisfying sight seeing people throwing their toys out the pram because they haven't got their own way. And Donald Trump is going to be accused of being that character, but actually the characters who are best represented as the toys out of pram throwers. It was Hillary, the last one.
Well, let's see, because of course Fox Television will essentially get to decide a lot about who, that they're the biggest on Trump's side, I think. So they'll have a big say.
I disagree with your sentiments. You'd hope that there's not a lot of violence. Whichever side you're on, that only plays into the hands of more and more draconian measures.
That would be really bad.
So, I happen to be quite a firm believer in the work of Erica Chenoweth, which is, the idea of civil disobedience, non-violent civil disobedience, which has proven to have worked. I mean, it's in the US, they've got way more guns and stuff like that, so they could have a good game of cowboys and Indians if they chose to. But whether that would actually achieve what people are trying to achieve or not remains to be seen. I mean, I do think the best arguments will prevail, and the best arguments in this are not the best arguments don't rest in the hands of the globalists. They just don't. They overstate their case. They've overstated their case on global warming. They've overstated their case with respect to this pandemic idea. They've overstated their case with respect to specialization, if you like, in terms of industry. It's basically, at this point, it's quite obvious that these globalists couldn't organise a booze up in a bloody brewery. They could. They're bloody useless.
I think these ideas are going to be very helpful when it comes to watching the coverage that we are exposed to right now on, for example, the BBC, etc. I think we should wrap up now, Roger.
Yeah, for sure. All right then.
Has this been helpful or useful? I hope so. It has been for me. Just having a bit of a think about what we've got coming.
Yeah. I mean, it's for me, I mean, I saw that Laura Kusenberg thing, and it's kind of orange man bad, Biden good or whatever, and it's much more complicated than that, and just pay. That's my view. It pains me to see that level of oversimplification. And credit where credit.
Well, I think she's only doing that. She's only doing that because she's trying to make it sound as though she's standing up for reporting, which is quite funny given who she is. But there you go.
Yeah, I don't. Like I say, I don't mind. I mean, she's got a job to do, and she has her own views, obviously, as well. So, but it could be a bit more balanced and as simple as that.
She's
really
awful. Yeah. All right, Roger. Well, great talking to you.
I honestly don't mind her as a person. I never have. I often disagree with what she says and kind of think, oh, blimey, could have done a bit better than that. But one of the things she said, which I found absolutely fascinating, is when Boris Johnson got the leadership of the Tory party, she said that she felt that the Tories were voting for a lucky general. And I thought that was a really insightful, very interesting point. Obviously, he's not turning into such a lucky general, is he? He's allowed himself to...
He's pretty lucky. I mean, there's just been so much scandal around him, and he stays. That's pretty lucky. Except if you take the other view, which is that there are forces at play that just prevent him from going.
I think his true colours rest more with his brother and his sister and his father, and I think his early promise in the Telegraph, slagging off the EU when he was out there as the correspondent.
Yeah, it didn't last very long, did it? Exactly.
No, that's just him being the poser that he is. It's as simple as that, really. But he's their poser, not ours. I would say. But there we are.
Yeah. All right. Well, good talking to you, and till the next time.
All right. Cheers, Ranjan. Take care.
Okay.
Mate.
Bye.
Bye.